In a moment, we will get started. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. I appreciate all of you who are attending today. This presentation is part of our Inclusion, Diversity, Anti-Racism, and Equity, or IDARE initiative. IDARE was launched in 2020 at UC Davis Health under the leadership of some of my colleagues, Dr. Henry Ton, Cesar Dennis, Kobin Kochai, and Sarah Ive. The success of IDARE at UC Davis Health led us to launch the endeavor broadly across UC Davis in 2023 with the help of more of my colleagues, Christopher Wenfeniger, Michael Villalobos, Mariana Galindo Vega, and our consultant, Mark Simon. And groups of us have been meeting this year, and many of you are in those groups. But we wanted to provide this particular presentation more widely to any DEI committees that are working on DEI projects at UC Davis. So IDARE's focus is on supporting divisional DEI committees, and that means that DEI practitioners and leaders are able to work together to take action on our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. As you know, there is a lot of institutional data available on the UC Davis campus, but we are going to focus on 4 experience surveys today. In this order, the UC Undergraduate Experience Survey, the UC Graduate Experience Survey, the Staff Experience Survey, and the Coach Survey. So today, our panelists will go in the order of Erica, John, Randa, and Kathy. Again, they'll introduce themselves and then answer some of the following questions, among others. What type of data is available? What are the advantages and limitations of using the existing survey data? How can units access disaggregated data for their school or college or department or organization? And how might they approach making meaning of data in the context of privacy concerns or small cell size? So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erica Jackson.
All right, thanks so much, Laura. It's really nice to be here. Let me share my screen. All right, that look good? Okay, I just want to say thanks to Laura for both having us and for magically picking the perfect day to host this, because this is actually the launch day of the UC Undergraduate Experience Survey across all 9 UC campuses, which is awesome. So hopefully everyone leaves this meeting with excitement about the survey and the willingness to go encourage our students to take the survey. Oops, that was all supposed to be said. Here. Be excited. We have a great UQ's website that our team helps put together, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Cheryl Bach, who's here on the call with us. She does a lot of this work for launching the survey and getting our response rates where we need them to be, and then doing a lot of the analysis of it. So you can always reach out to me, but you can always also reach out to Cheryl Bach with questions about UQ's, and she will help you out. So I wanted to walk through quickly just a little bit about UQ's history, what it is, what you can do with the data, where you can get the data, and then usually the question is, okay, that's all great, but there's one thing I need, and that dashboard or that report doesn't give it. So we'll talk a little bit about what to do if the tools we have out there aren't meeting your needs. So UQ's is a biennial survey that's conducted in the spring of even years. So here we are in the spring of an even year, and we are launching UQ's. So it's been done since 2002. So we have over 20 years of data about UQ's, and a lot of the questions have been in it for well over a decade. So there is year-to-year changes, but not a ton. So it gives us really rich comparison data over 20 years. You can see, so our colleagues in the Office of the President have put together a great dashboard that actually you can go one at a time through the years, or they had this longitudinal dashboard where you can see particular questions and how that one question has changed over time, which is really great. It also is rich with the fact that we have benchmark data against all the other 9 UC campuses that have undergraduates, as well as about 20 other state universities across the country, research ones that are really good comparator institutions. You know, sometimes we'll get survey data from other organizations and they'll say, well, we have great benchmark data, and it's some tiny private school in the South, and it's like, that's not really the comparison data that we're looking for. So we have good comparison data both with the UCs, and we even have the row level data for the other institutions in the CERU consortium. that list, that link takes you to the list of other institutions, which includes Michigan and Virginia and UT Austin and several. So it's a great source of data just because it has longitudinal and benchmark data. And we have a decent response rate, which is so hard to get these days, but it's actually gone down considerably. So when I started in this office, we were almost a 50% response rate, and now we are lucky to have over 20%. It takes a ton of work, a ton of people's time, a ton of financial incentives for our students. So we spend over $5,000 getting this response rate to just to 25%, which is what we had last year. So we do need your help, and we need everyone on campus to think of this as being their survey that they can use, and they can mine the data for answering the questions they're looking at. So we really want to think of this as like our office, conducts it, but we really want everyone to sort of help pitch in both on analyzing the data, but also encouraging students to take it. So if you're in a student-facing unit and have access to students, we have posters right now. If you have a place for us to post a poster, let me know, and we will come by and bring an advertising poster to you. I did want to, on the side of the response rate has gone down over time, which isn't great, but I did want to give you some confidence in the representativeness of the survey. So Office of the President also hosts a response rate dashboard where you can look at every campus and look at how representative each survey is by demographic. And so here you can really see that if you choose Davis and you choose ethnicity, that the percent of our students in each race ethnicity category and the percent of respondents in each category are pretty close. The only one where there's a significant deviation is international students are about 16% of our student body and only 10% of respondents. So they're definitely underrepresented in our survey. The other group that's somewhat underrepresented is women, but on the whole, even with a 25% response rate, we have a pretty good representation, which is much harder to get when you have a response rate that's under 10%. Getting that to be a representative set of responses is harder. So that's information about the survey in general and the history of it, but the data are hosted. We used to actually host a version of this on our Aggie Data or Aggie Dash, if you're familiar with that. But once we convinced Office of the President to add a filter that lets you cut down by essentially major, so it's zip code, so it can be comparable across campuses, we realized that this was really the best resource. So these dashboards, which I'll link here, and we can share these slides, go through, you can see the tabs across the top, sort of break the survey down, which is very large. There's, I don't know, Cheryl, help me on question count, almost 100, over 100. Lots of questions, and it probably, I think we estimate that our students need to spend at least 20 minutes to get through the whole survey. So it's quite long. So that's great because it asks lots of questions, and there's lots of data that you all can use in your thinking about the questions you want to ask. The downside is that sometimes it just feels like a beast to figure out all what's on there. The tabs at the top broadly break down the questions into areas like satisfaction, academic experience, academic engagement. But there's some really rich questions about students' experiences on campus in terms of whether they feel like they belong here, whether they're valued by the institution, whether they feel like, it's on here, channels for expressing discrimination or harassment are readily available to students at UC, and lots of these questions have been asked for several years. So I would just really encourage you to take 15 minutes of your day and go through each of these tabs and say, okay, which of these questions are of interest to me? Can I see them longitudinally? How do we compare to other campuses? Because that benchmark data really helps us see, okay, well, only 30% of students feel good about this, but where does that put us within the other UCs? Not that it's a competition, but in trying to think about where our relative strengths and opportunities for improvement are. It's really useful to have that other campus data. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is we do have the row level data in our office. We are very careful about sharing that. We've had some data, what's the word? Issues before with data that were compromised and transmitting data from Office of the President to some users. And so we are very careful about sharing row level data because it does contain such private information about students. But we are happy if these data that are available on the dashboards aren't meeting your needs to reach out to us, and we can talk about us performing an analysis that helps you mine the data in the way you need to look at it. For example, someone from College of Biological Sciences wrote this week and said, sure, this is great, and I can see the questions I need, and I can break it down my major, but I actually need it to be broken down by college, and the UC or the Office of the President dashboards don't break down college by college because all 9 UCs don't have the same college structure. So we're happy to help with that. If you have a particular group of students, students that use a particular service, and you can give us student IDs, we can show you aggregated responses for those students compared to students outside of your unit. So we're always happy to work on projects like that. And we really just want to encourage people to think of this as a data source that is available to them, both to mine the dashboards that exist, but also to reach out to us. And Cheryl's awesome to work with, and we're more than happy to help you get the data you need and then help you with the analysis you need. I don't want to take up too much time. I think we said just a few minutes per person, so I may have hit on some of those questions, but I know we're going to do questions and answers so at the end. So I think I'll pass it on from there, unless you want to do questions in between.
Well, let's do the questions at the end. So I'll turn it over to John.
Okay, thanks. And I think a lot of this is going to rhyme. I guess this is climate survey day here at IDARE. So I'll highlight what's different. I guess I got to share my screen. And let's see. Okay. So thanks for inviting me, Laura, and for giving me a chance to talk about the UC Graduate Student Experience Survey. It started in 2014 at UC Berkeley as a student-led effort. And there was a students, I believe it was their graduate assembly. They put together the instrument, they administered it, and presented the findings and campus-wide. So I think I like to kind of start with that because it's a student-level effort about students, right? And those findings were presented and to the graduate deans across the system. And some of the findings around, mental health, basic needs, food security, housing security, were concerning. And they said, we need to replicate this survey across the campus, which we did in 2016. I think a report came out the following year. And then there was a little lapse where we kind of considered whether we should go into a, larger consortium like CERU, like Erica was describing, or whether we should do it ourselves. There was a small pandemic that intervened, and we eventually got it going in 2021 we're doing it in the odd years. Our second administration was last year. Our next will be next spring. And with all the benefits of pooling across the UC and over time, in theory, this gives you a little more analytical traction because you're able to ask the same question year over year. And maybe with the broader pools, like there are some programs that are quite small, and even some disciplines on campus where there are not that many graduate students. And by pooling across the UC, maybe you can get better power, statistical power, that is to say. In practice, we change the questions just enough each year that it makes it really difficult to find the answers and to compare the answers once you find them sometimes, but we're still in early days on this. And then there's some other quirks, I guess you'll say. Spring 2021 was kind of an odd year to be baseline. That was the end of our year of remote instruction. Maybe people had just had their second booster shot at that point. There was an insurrection. We're 9 months away from George Floyd. There's a lot going on. Not the ideal baseline, but you got to start somewhere. So that was kind of the when. This is kind of the what. This is sort of what are the topics. You can see there's about 10 sort of large areas with each has a lot of questions. It's a long survey. I'll resist the urge to kind of dive into kind of the mental health and basic needs findings that were so alarming. I'll say, around student priorities, one thing that has been consistent across all the administrations, if, of the options we give them, students generally say financial support, advising, and professional development in some order, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 3, 2. That's pretty consistent across the campuses and across the administrations. So that helps us. That's just an example of how we use that information to make sure that our programming is more or less lining up with what students tell us they want. Let's see, I did when, what, and this is who. What is the population that we're trying to reach with this? It's all graduate and professional students on campus. I'll say that, when the graduate deans were thinking about the questions, we probably had doctoral students and master's students front of mind, but it goes to all graduate and professional students. I wonder sometimes whether all the questions, like around your major professor or advising, if they land the same way for all these different levels of students. So that's something I try to keep in mind as I interpret them. I'll talk about response rate. The first year we did it in 2021, we had a 27% response rate. Last year that fell to 14%. So that's alarmingly low, right? Anytime you have a survey, you're going to get sampling and selectivity. Does that bias the results? It certainly increases the standard of error that you're getting when you get low response rates, but you're potentially biasing. I don't know which way, but the 85 people who aren't answering the survey might be different than the 15% that are, in a way that's meaningful to these questions. That's a concern. Okay, so I'll point you to resources, and these whatever we follow up with in terms of follow-up, you'll have links to these. The first link in the upper left is just grad.ucdavis.edu/UCGSES, and it has links to all the rest. That's our just sort of grad studies page. And there's a news article we did after 2021 that I think is a pretty good narrative explanation of how to use the data, how they connect with graduate student life. But anyway, all the links to the survey on the grad studies page. If you want to know actually what's in the survey instrument, what are we asking students? How has that changed year to year? What's a summary of the findings? I would direct you to the Institutional Research and Academic Planning page, the UCOP page. And then there's dashboards and data tables, right? And those are really well done, I think, really usable. And I find myself not tempted to really build my own product because they've actually done as good a job as I would do, or maybe better. So I will just throw some results out there because, I love data, even when it doesn't love me back, right? And this is, just for this audience, right? There's a big section on program climate. You can see at the bottom, it's truncated. There's more questions than this. You'll see, I would say, we're looking at on the order of 80–90% of respondents are agreeing or strongly agreeing that they're respected at this university. Only a handful are disagreeing or strongly disagreeing with that. Pretty good. I think the responses that support is softest are on the bottom where they say, I feel like belonging. So if you want to put the I and I dare, that question about belonging, more concerning than others, but still pretty good numbers. The other area where I think this audience would want to dig in is in the advising experience. I think at grad studies, we put a lot of emphasis on the role of mentoring and advising in the graduate career. And I think that plays out in this survey at some of the questions that we ask about safe spaces for conversations and welcoming environment. We put that in the advising section, right? And so I think that's a really good place to look. And I'll say, just like competently executed dashboard, there's ways to compare results across campuses, across these groups, I just would direct you to, if you have questions about the results in this and how they kind of paint a picture of climate on this campus, there's really good comparisons. And I'll say one other caution, right? I have right here the view of percentage of responses for each question. I would also click over to the option to provide number of responses, because before you draw any strong conclusions from these data, you'd want to see, okay, am I basing this on 54%, or is it 4 responses, or is that the same number, right? And just caveat lector. Okay, and so I think this is my last slide here. So specific to climate, Graduate Studies has done some additional analysis, right? The dashboards and the reports are great, but sometimes we want to go further. We did a report and some presentations for the Chancellor's Graduate Professional Student Advisory Board and the Graduate Student Assembly that was really focused on COVID-19 coming out of that spring 21 administration. We did a topic analysis there of the free text responses, which was kind of fun, but at the end of the day, it was kind of like, here's like 10 word clouds, and these students identify more with these words clouds, and these students, it was, I don't know how much analytical cutting power it had, but it was important to do. We also partnered with the Graduate Mentoring Initiative and Elizabeth Sturdy to talk about sort of program level analysis for programs that were in the initiative. And so, okay, they've had these narrative discussions, they've been working on these themes. How does that play out in the data that we have? How does that, inform or confirm or question what you think you know, right? And I think Associate Dean Ellen Hartigan-O'Connor has used some of the data from UC GSES to support faculty advisor trainings. Again, these are the folks who are overseeing advising in their graduate programs. It's an important layer. So that's just, some of the ways we've tried to interpret the data. In terms of further collaboration, we early on when we built this out first year, we at the system level, we have in place, a way to do data sharing agreements, right? We would also be cautious. Nobody's actually taken me up on one of these. But yeah, if you might have to go in front of the IRB, you would have to have a data management plan. You'd have to do some hurdles to get row level access to these data at UC and maybe across, or at UC Davis and maybe across the other UCs, depending on the project, but you can check with me first to see, hey, what would the data show if you had them, right? Maybe we could look at that, and would it be valuable to actually dive in deep, especially with the response rate concern that we have, right? A question that I would want to pose to the group was how to get higher response rates. Whether could we make, especially if you're a graduate student or a professional student listening and you've had experience with this, how could we shorten it or promote it better? How could we get better response rates so that we can draw more meaningful and robust conclusions from it? I would also say, if we want to make it longer and go the other way, we have capacity to do wildcard questions. We could add, specific questions on specific concerns. I'm reluctant to do that for the reasons stated, but it's something we could do. Anyway, that's what I have for now. And I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. All right, I will turn it over to Randa. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. It would help if I took myself off mute. Well, thank you, Laura, for inviting me here today to share some information about the Campus Staff Experience Survey, which we've done only twice. We do it every other year. My name is Randa Wilbur. I've been the project lead for this Campus Staff Experience Survey. I'm also the Director of HR for Strategic Initiatives. And I'm also pleased to announce that there are a couple of other members of this team and the advisory group for this survey that are on the call, Annalisa Teixeira and Myrene Abbott. So my colleagues, if I miss anything or you have additional information, please help me out and feel free to speak up. So as I mentioned, the Staff Experience Survey is administered just on campus. Health has their own employee engagement survey, which they've been running for quite a few years. I think that there is some intention to try and align and or combine the survey so we can compare data by using similar questions, but that's a future goal. So for campus, we did initiate this survey in 2020, just before the pandemic, and again in 2022. It's administered by, now they are calling themselves Vivo Glint, which is part of Microsoft. While we've been administering this survey, we started out with Glint, who then was acquired by LinkedIn, and now it's part of Microsoft. So we've been through some vendor challenges, migrating data to maintain our baseline. The survey is repeated every other year, as I mentioned, and we are coordinating with other surveys on campus to prevent survey fatigue, because we believe that survey fatigue may be impacting all of our participation rates. We do send the survey out to all staff. That's about 8,895 staff members. That was the last count. And you'll see the list of staff members that are included. Faculty are not included, students are not included. So these are staff members, both represented and non-represented, as well as probationary staff. And last year we added temporary employees who reported the highest scores on all survey questions. So we for sure will invite them to participate again. They impact our scores very nicely. Our survey has 27 questions in total. 24 use a Likert scale on a scale of 1 to 5. But for every question, we also have comment boxes so people can write in the reasons for their score. And then we also have 2 open-ended questions and 1 multiple choice question, which was added in the last survey. One of those open-ended questions has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we added that in our 2022 survey, and I'll share more information with you about that in just a second. So who receives the data? Once the responses are in from the 8,800 and so staff employees on campus, all managers and supervisors receive a report as long as the confidentiality thresholds have been maintained. So we require at least 5 responses for quantitative results and 10 responses for them to be able to view their comments. Demographic data is not available in the manager and supervisor dashboards, but it is available to all of the governance groups, which includes the chancellor-appointed staff experience campus advisory group, as well as the project team working on this survey. The advisory group looks at all of the data, carefully studies responses from all demographic groups, and then identifies the campus-wide issues and prepares solutions and a report to the chancellor, the provost, and the chancellor's leadership committee. In this past survey, there were 4 issues that were identified that were campus-wide, and those issues were career opportunities, learning and growth. That's 1. Number 2 was diversity and inclusion. Number 3 was communication flow. And then the 4th one was whether people believe that any action would be taken as a result of the survey. And that's the lowest scoring item and has been for the last 2 surveys. This is an example of some of the data that we are able to look at. And you can see that we run the reports by question, and for each question, we can look at the scores across a wide variety of demographic groups, including age, bargaining unit, tenure, ethnicity, gender, etc. And doing this analysis really helps us identify additional issues and where intervention and or pockets of work needs to be taken. So for example, in the last survey, looking at 4 key questions on the survey about empowerment, equal opportunity, the ability to speak my mind without repercussions, and work-life balance, you can see that the scores from African-American females and to a lesser degree African-American males were much lower than the normal male and female population. So and this was consistent with both surveys, that African-American female scores tend to be significantly lower on many of the 27 survey questions. And so this was reported to the chancellor, to the advisory group. And we've reached out and asked a variety of groups, DEI included, if there was opportunity to do additional research on trying to identify root cause. We have not yet found a group that had bandwidth to take this on. So if any of the IDARE or DEI committees do have bandwidth to help us with this research, we would really appreciate it. So who has access to the survey information? First of all, we're very pleased to let you know that because it only takes about 10 minutes to complete the survey, because there are only 27 questions, we have had a consistent response rate of about 74, 75% to both of the surveys. Now, We know that that will begin to diminish over time if people don't have confidence that action is being taken. So we do post all of the questions to the survey, all of the data, all of the responses to the survey are posted on the staff experience website, which is part of the HR website, and I've included a link to that website here. We have also just started a staff experience network where we invite anyone within all of the campus, school, colleges and divisions who are working on any form of employee engagement and responses to their staff experience surveys. We've asked them to meet with us quarterly, and we share progress against the 4 campus-wide initiatives, and then we have people present from each of the respective units on what they are doing in their school, college, or division around responding to the survey and or any other employee engagement efforts that they may be entertaining. So that's a little bit of information about this important staff experience survey. We do have intention to run the survey again in 2024. We are having some challenges with the vendor being acquired by other companies and migrating our data and getting ready for us. So stay tuned, but we will run the survey again, maybe not on schedule. It was supposed to run in October of 2024, and we're still trying to decide if the new vendor can be ready for that. So stay tuned for that. And I'll pass by the questions, and let me just see if Annalisa or Myrene has any other important information to share that I have forgotten.
No, Miranda, I think you gave a great overview and brought forward great examples of how we are disaggregating data across different demographics and identities, and just celebrating all the engagement we've had with our network group, just to highlight those practices that are leading to strong scores and share out those successes and inspire others working in staff experience and culture DEI spaces.
We do have the ability to run reports and configure reports based upon the data in different ways. So if any of the IDARE communities need additional data, please feel free to contact me, and I will work with the team to get you any additional information or view of the data that you might need. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. All right, turning it over to Kathy.
Thank you. So it's really great to be here and also to have heard from all of my wonderful colleagues about the other climate surveys that are available. My name is Kathy Wu. I'm the manager of institutional academic data and academic affairs. And today I'll be talking a little bit about the Coach Faculty Job Satisfaction Survey. So the Coach Faculty Satisfaction Survey was first administered in 2012-13, then again in 2016-17, and once more in 2020-21. The survey was administered to full-time, pre-tenure or tenure faculty, non-tenure track faculty, and clinical faculty. The 2021 survey yielded approximately 998 faculty respondents from the eligible pool, which translates to approximately a 40% response rate. The Coach survey focused on benchmark thematic areas, including nature of the work, service, teaching, research, facilities and work resources, personal and family policies, health and retirement benefits, interdisciplinary work, collaboration, mentoring, tenure policies, tenure expectations, promotion, leadership, shared governance, departmental reflection, and finally, appreciation and recognition. So as you can see, just from the thematic categories alone, this was a very lengthy survey, which we do think contributed to part of the response rate we got. So we are even more thankful for the faculty that did take the time to fill this out for us. Faculty respondents were asked to rate their satisfaction in response to the Coach question in these categories on a Likert scale, so from 1 to 5, usually corresponding with strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, neither agree nor disagree, somewhat agree, and strongly agree. So what data is available and where can we access it? After the survey was administered, Academic Affairs had put together campus-wide reports on their website. This includes the coach results overview, the faculty diversity report, step plus system questions, and the impact of COVID-19 assessment. Past reports from the 2012-13 and 2016 surveys are also publicly available on our website. And there's a little QR code, and we'll come back to that later on as well, in case anyone wants to grab that website link. In addition to the publicly available reports, a 150-page report containing respondent responses to each of the coach questions were also shared with each of the individual schools and colleges. These responses were examined individually by school and college in comparison to the rest of UC Davis and looked specifically at the intersectionality of sex, faculty of color versus non-faculty of color, and rank. Deans from each of the school and colleges were also asked to bring together a faculty advisory committee to discuss these survey findings and submit potential action plan changes to policies or practices, depending on what they've seen and what they felt was important. Once this process was complete, each school and college shared a report on these issues and action items with both Vice Provost Cass and also Provost Krogan. And if interested on these specific schools and colleges, we do ask departments to reach out to their school college dean's office, and their school college dean's office will then be able to share this report with them as well. So let's talk a little bit about the sample data, what is available on both our website and what was available to the deans and schools and colleges. So this is a sample of some of the tables and figures that were found on the campus-wide publicly available reports. I think these ones were both from the overview report. And for example, in figure 1, I really wish I made it bigger, so I apologize for that. You can see that UC Davis scored the highest amongst all peer institutions in their cohort for the promotion to full process, the departmental quality, and collaboration. However, UC Davis did score lower compared to our peers in the nature of the work service, facilities and work resources, etc. categories. In figure 2 on the right, you can see where there are significant changes from the 2016-17 survey to the current survey. For instance, we can see that satisfaction has slightly increased for 6 thematic areas: the research aspects of faculty work, personal and family policies, mentoring, tenure policies, divisional leadership, departmental engagement and quality, and also appreciation recognition. You can also see that, for instance, URM faculty members did rate departmental collegiality lower than white faculty members. And this is another example of data. And these are data that are found in the school college reports, which really take a deeper dive into all of the survey questions and really stratifies it by different intersectionalities. So on the left, this is an example of a question, its numerical responses, and also the graphical version for school and college. So in this example, you can see that the responses are stratified by faculty rank. We have assistant, associate, full rank from the sample school and college. You'll see the specific responses are very satisfied, satisfied, and also what the variable mean was across all these categories and across the UC Davis as a whole, and also the ranks for the specific school and college we're examining. And on the school and college, of course, there is actually a legend that shows what the different colors mean, but the blue ones for UC Davis and the yellow ones did pertain to the school and college, and each color was a assistant, associate, or full rank. On the right, this is also an overall comparison of the average responses per benchmark session of school and college compared to UC Davis as a whole. So this was really nice because you can see that the sample school and college has on average higher favorability for departmental quality and collaboration when compared to results across all of UC Davis, but slightly less satisfaction with questions related to mentoring and the service aspect of their work. So these took the variable mean for each question within a thematic category and averaged them. And these benchmark variables were also stratified by rank, by gender, by faculty of color, non-faculty of color. So you can see how the responses change within the school and college. So what are the limitations of this data? Coach was specifically targeted towards faculty, which means that unfortunately other academics are not represented in these responses. Small cell size exclusions are also at play, and there was a minimum cell size of n greater than 5 across any intersectional aggregate. Finally, these responses may not be reflective of all of our faculty, as we only had a 40% response rate of the faculty surveyed. We also found that responses did vary between rank, sex, and faculty of color. So for instance, you can see that responses were slightly higher among tenure than pre-tenure faculty. They were higher amongst associate professors compared to full professors. They were higher amongst women compared to men, and also higher amongst white faculty when compared to faculty of color. Finally, since the COACH survey is governed by standard practices and protocols of human subjects resource, we unfortunately do not provide access to full data set because the full data set with row level data is restricted within academic affairs alone. However, if there is data for any of the IDEA committees or any questions that you're interested in that isn't represented on either the school college report or the campus-wide report, please feel free to reach out to us at a data manager, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or see if we can do additional research to help answer the questions that you have. Thank you.
Great. Well, a little bit of, virtual, I don't know, hand waving for applause for our four presenters. Thank you so much, Erica, John, Randa, and Kathy. And I want to open it up to questions that folks may have. Feel free to use the chat, the Q&A. You can raise your hand. You can, raise your hand probably. We have quite a few people here. So all of those options are available to you for any questions. I am going to just ask a quick question to the panelists. Are there any other surveys that you would highlight, experience surveys for other populations that you would want to highlight here where there's more of this kind of climate or experience survey data? Anyone? Erica?
I can chime in. I would say UCUS has far more of this than our other two large surveys that we conduct, but we conduct an exit survey of every graduating student about 2 months after they graduate. And we do ask them questions about their time here, but it's more like, did you have an internship while you were here? Did you work? So they're more, I would say, academic in nature than experience, but not of interest. And we have dashboards about that on Aggie Dash. And then we do an alumni survey. Right now it's primarily used for undergraduate program review, and it's given to alumni that are between 1 and 5 years out. So the undergrad experience survey is the main one that out of our office that I think is of interest to this group.
Go ahead, Randa. I think you had unmuted.
Oh, well, I think Annalisa had her hand up first. Let me give Annalisa a chance to respond. We may be saying the same thing.
Potentially, if it's about the health
Yes.
survey. So UC Davis Health runs, HR runs a staff experience survey at UC Davis Health called the Feedback Community Survey. So we in HR keep a close eye on the 2 surveys run at campus at Health. Randa had spoken about a desire to align those surveys, and maybe Randa, that's where you were headed. But recognizing that IDARE spans both health and campus, we wanted to name that in HR, our staff experience survey is run at both campus and health. And I'll drop a link to the health survey. Some of the information of that survey is in the health intranet and wouldn't be accessible for non-health employees, but I'll see what I can find that would be a public website.
Right. The only other thing that is, thank you, Annalisa. That is what I thought people might want to be aware of. And they call that the community survey, Community. It's kind of an interesting name. The only other comment I'd like to make is in our surveys, we get a lot of responses to how many surveys there are out there, and there's just a lot of survey fatigue. So, just an appeal to really consider, designing and administering additional surveys when there are so many already, and are we taking advantage of the ones that are out there? But the first part is awareness, and Laura, thank you for setting this up today to help address that issue of awareness.
Great. There is a question in the chat of, do you know when the community survey will come out again?
I think it is scheduled for 2027 right now. They do have a pulse survey that's required for magnet certification for the hospital that may run earlier as a pulse survey. They just finished one in the spring of this year, so I think their next and they have fresh data, so you can find out more about what they heard at Health through the survey that was done this year. And then 2027, I believe, is the next target date for their full survey.
Are there any other questions I do have a few on my list that I can throw out there, but I would love to hear from the group here. All right, and I'm gonna put this actually to John, but to any of the groups, which is how have you responded when groups come to you and that cell size is too small? Do you have any specific examples that you can talk about what you've done in those cases? And
Yeah, kind of a heartbreaking example, right? There was a faculty who was referred to me, was trying to do something in his program, and I had to say, yeah, you've had 3 respondents over the last 2 surveys. There's nothing I can give you from this information. I mean, at that point, you're better off convening a focus group and talking to your people, right? The centrally administered one was not landing. Pretty small program, so 3 out of a small number is, about 15%, right? Turns out. Yeah, so, but I think what the survey can do for you is to give you some norms to go against, right? Like, I think often we compare, and this is just my editorialize, my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. We compare our environment against our aspirations, and sometimes it's useful to compare against other institutions who are in the same boat, right? That, for graduate school is very difficult, right? And despite that, we still see some satisfaction. And so it's not 100% satisfaction. It's not even 90 in most cases, but it gives you something to norm against other than your ideal. And I think that's important in addition to having your ideal.
thanks, John. I don't know if the other panelists have anything to add to that.
For the staff experience survey, we know if the cell size is too small by the number of respondents. And so we have confidentiality thresholds. If there are not 3 respondents, that data is not lost. It rolls up into the next level manager's report. So at least their voice is heard. Their manager doesn't get to see their specific team's input because of lack of numbers, but it rolls up to the next level.
I just mirror what John said. I think combining years, combining campuses, combining programs, if you're too small in your year and campus and program is the way to go. And then sure, you may be different than that, but it's a really good starting place. And I think sometimes there's less variability across programs and years and campuses than one might think. So it might be a fairly accurate representation.
So there's a question for any of the panelists. What are some examples of actions that have been taken based on survey responses? It seems that being more transparent with what will be done with the data is a big concern in terms of survey response rates.
And the 2 big examples that I often point to, so the pantry, if you know about the pantry that we use to support students with food insecurity, that was generated after the student experience survey several years ago showed this as a problem on our campus. So that's one very tangible thing. But the other thing that happens, multiple times per year is that basically in every Regents presentation that you'll see, there are at least a few UQ's data points cited because, there's lots of anecdotes that happen at Regents meetings, but really you need to ground that in some data, and that's often used there. So I don't know how compelling that is for our students if they think about, what's happening in Regents conversations, but it's where a lot of the policy and practices get discussed and shaped. And so it's definitely a powerful tool there that the Office of the President tries to use it as much as possible, and then campuses as well in presentations at that level.
Go ahead, Randa.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of work has been done. A lot of progress has been made against the staff experience survey. From the last survey, we don't ask questions specifically about compensation, because that's more about employee satisfaction than employee engagement. But for every question, people take the opportunity to talk about compensation. And we know that that's the number 1 and number 2 reason why people leave the campus and health. So one of the actions that was taken is that the advisory group requested and got permission for incentivizing and allowing pay increases for internal lateral moves within the organization. And so that's not only about compensation, but one of the key issues on the survey was lack of career opportunity or lack of career growth. And when we compare that, oh, that's another survey that people may want to know about. There's an exit survey that's done every time someone leaves the health campus or the Davis campus. Anytime anyone leaves, they're asked to fill out a survey. We track the reasons why people are exiting. And the number one reason on the Davis campus for people leaving is lack of career opportunity. It's the number two reason for health. And so there's been a lot of work done on opportunities for career growth, which Annalisa and her team have actually initiated and developed a whole new manager supervisor curriculum. She's hired a career counseling specialist. And of course, you may already be aware of her career work week, where there's a whole week of helping people support, promote, and plan for their careers. Anything else on that, Annalisa, you want to share?
I'll just name that the results in HR, we keep a really close look at those because it helps us in our strategic planning and deciding where to invest our resources to bring new offerings forward. And all the work to strengthen our career development resources was in lockstep with what we were learning from staff from our staff experience survey.
Yeah, so actually there were a lot of initiatives have been taken at the campus-wide level as well as at the local level. And so if you go to the staff experience website, you'll see evidence of all the progress that's been made campus-wide as well as by local units. And we do that to encourage ongoing participation.
Thanks, Randa. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I won't. So I was thinking about specific dedicated mental health resources for graduate students. So we had already kind of gone along that path before the first UC GSCS, or even before the first grad well-being survey went out. But that feedback was important to us to make sure that we were actually right in dedicating those resources and gives us support for sustaining them, right? And I dropped a link in the chat to the article, the narrative that I mentioned, where I won't say that the UC GSCS caused these actions to take place, but they highlighted concerns that we thought were there. It gives us more support, more data to continue these initiatives. And I think, you know, I don't know if that, I hope that's responsive to like what's different with the UC GSCS than without it. I wouldn't put, it's just another piece of evidence that we use along with our own eyes and, you know, various conversations around budget process to make sure we're doing the right thing for our students.
Great. I don't know, Kathy, if you have anything to add, but I can say that with the coach survey, we've actually used some of the results from the coach survey to develop projects that were then funded by the UC Advancing Faculty Diversity Grants Program. And so, like, for example, our Friends project was in response to some feedback on the coach survey from associate professors trying to get to full. Do you have anything to add to that, Kathy?
Yeah, I have a little bit. So as we mentioned, all of these deans from the different schools and colleges received the co-survey had gotten together over the past year. They've kind of created these faculty advisory committees and came up with sort of an action plan of things that they've noticed that the survey results showed, and also how they planned on changing some of that. So for instance, this one school college has said, you know, they were going to address associate professor dissatisfaction. They were going to continue trainings regarding how to put together dossiers, which helps deal with both myths and perceptions around promotion, tenures, and merit. And also, you know, just including more academic federation members in general in survey. As you know, the coach was only targeted specifically towards faculty. This other school college has said, you know, for instance, one of the challenges they noticed was the low merit / promotion award for interdisciplinary work. So they were going to have their associate dean facilitate a meeting each fall reviewing promotion tenure standards and allowing for open faculty discussion. So I think at my level, I haven't been really privy to a lot of these conversations, but I do know that each of the schools and colleges went up and then talked with Vice Provost Cass and also Provost Kogan, and they've kind of created an action plan on how to use these survey findings to better the climate within each school and college.
Great, thank you. And I wonder if I kind of want to throw a question out to the participants. are there any research questions that you have that you wonder, can I answer this by using some of these surveys? Or have you tried to find, information based on something that you're curious about? While people are thinking, I will also mention that through IDARE at UC Davis Health, they did do an assessment that was unique to IDARE for each of the units. And one of the reasons that we didn't do that on the Davis campus is we actually did a pilot. We put a survey out to a couple of different units and did the analysis. And what we found is that, as all of these folks who are here today can tell you, the effort that goes into designing a survey, promoting a survey, and trying to get that high response rate, and then analyzing the survey is significant. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to come here and highlight these particular surveys is to show what's already available, so that you all can see what's there and see if that is a useful tool for you. I also like that John mentioned focus groups. Gathering small groups of people together can be a very efficient way to get to some of the data that you might be looking for. And sometimes we also sort of know, or we already have the data with us. And so defining like what is the next step to do with that data is kind of the hard part, even more than gathering that data. So that's one of the reasons that we've gathered IDARE together, to give people support in doing that. One of the questions one of the comments in the chat is about interested in health and well-being related questions for employees. So Rand, I don't know if you want to speak to that in our last couple of minutes here.
Yes, thank you. The staff experience survey on campus actually has a lot of questions around health and well-being. And one of the things we added last year was a multiple choice question. The question was, what do you need now? And there was a whole range of responses. And of course, work-life balance turns out to be a big one, but there were other health and well-being issues identified. So if you'd like to reach out to me, I'd be very happy to share that data with you, specifically around the health and well-being questions and responses.
And Kathy, are there similar questions in the coach survey for faculty?
Don't think so as much as all the other ones are in the staff experience, but if it's helpful, I'm always happy to share like a list of all of the questions. There's just so many in all the different thematic categories. And for coach, it was even different because not every single respondent was asked the same set of questions. So it's hard to say what data we have for what part of questions they are. They were kind of based on, some questions were based on rank, some questions were based on your location, like school of medicine, school of nursing had different questions compared to faculty at UC Davis.
Great, that's helpful. And Linda, did you have a question? I saw your hand.
At time, but just quickly, I was wondering if there was any work being done on making the data into a visual tool that was like a one-pager or something that we can share more broadly. Sometimes I think about these presentations and how it's a privilege to be able to sit and hear from all of you across campus in different units. But for those that want to be able to access the data and then make it accessible to their students and faculty and staff, how do we make that into something that is easily digestible through a visual aid?
Erica, I'm going to put that one to you.
Yeah, that's a great question, Linda. Thanks for asking it. I think we used to do more in that way. And when we got moved in the direction of Tableau and dashboards, we maybe lost some of that just simplification. I mean, we do PowerPoints and presentations, but yeah, to your point, that's not it's not intended to just be forwarded to broad groups of people and have them be able to understand it from there. So I think that's a great idea to have a one-pager, just sort of like whetting people's appetite for it, a high-level overview, and then hopefully they'll dig in more if they want, but even if they don't, feeling like they got a few takeaways. Thanks for suggesting it.
Great. Well, I am aware of the time. I don't want to keep anyone past time, so I just want to thank everyone for coming. I think we will be following this up with a survey to see how well this this event landed. So keep an eye out for that. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, Laura.